Welcome to the Experiment 1 pre-lab discussion. The goal for these pre-lab discussions is to give you some guidance on what to expect in the lab each week, and to cover some safety information and put some of the experiment into context if possible. And we'll also address some common issues that may come up in any given experiment. And this week, we'll also go over how to fill out your data tables and the calculations that you'll need to do in a bit more detail than we usually would. In this experiment, the biggest hazard that you're likely to encounter is the glassware. Before you use glassware, you always want to check for chips or cracks, because if the glassware happens to be chipped or cracked, you run the risk of cutting yourself or possibly spilling any chemicals held within that container. If you do find a chip or a crack, you should get rid of the glassware by throwing it into the glass waste container. We'll often tell you to use dry glassware in an experiment, and that's especially true when weighing. And we'll always get you to wash your glassware at the end of the experiment. So you might consider drying any wet glassware that you find with paper towel. Don't do it. You only need to cut yourself once before you learn that it's a bad idea. Instead, what you should do is dry your glassware by placing it upside down on a piece of paper towel or a drying rack. The purpose of this lab is really just to give you practice using a couple of different techniques for weighing, a couple of different techniques for transferring solids, and practice in cleaning glassware. In part 1, you're going to be using the direct weighing technique to measure exactly approximately 1 gram of sand into a beaker. And the term exactly approximately just means that you weigh out roughly that amount and you simply record all the digits given to you by the balance. When you do this, you should find that the balance gives you a reading to 3 decimal places, and you should record all 3 decimal places in your data table. On your screen in the Part 1 Weighing Directly table, you should see an example value added right now. In Part 2, you're going to practice weighing by difference. So you'll re-weigh beaker 1 that already has the sand in it and record that value. You'll then pour approximately half the sand from beaker 1 into beaker 2, and you'll re-weigh beaker 1. Because you're weighing by difference, the mass of beaker 1 with all the sand minus the mass of beaker 1 with only half the sand should give you the mass of the sand that was actually transferred into beaker 2. Part 3 is all about the losses of material that can happen when you do transfers from one container to another. You're going to start by taking beaker 2 with its small amount of sand in it and transferring by pouring all of that sand from beaker 2 into beaker 3. You'll then take the sand in beaker 3 and transfer it by pouring into beaker number 4. And at that point, you're going to weigh beaker number 4 with the sand in it. You're then going to pour the sand from beaker 4 into beaker number 5, and you'll reweigh the quote-unquote empty beaker 4. Knowing the mass of beaker 4 with the sand in it and the mass of beaker 4 with no more sand in it, you can calculate the mass of the sand that was transferred into beaker number 5. And then starting with the mass of sand in beaker 2 that you calculated in part 2, and then ending with the mass of sand in beaker number 5 that you just calculated, you should be able to determine the mass of sand that was lost during those several transfers. And after you're done the experimental procedure, you should clean all of your glassware and scoops. For more guidance on how to weigh things directly and by difference, and how to transfer solids with scoops or by pouring, as well as how to clean glassware, please watch the other instructional videos.